Have you ever reached a point where you were doing everything right, trying to become genuinely more awake, more healed, more whole, but instead of freedom, you just felt exhausted? I want to tell you a short story about someone who reached that exact point, because what happened to him reveals something that most of us never consider. Before Adyashanti became a spiritual teacher, he was a deeply committed Zen student. He approached spirituality the same way that he approached his competitive cycling career, with this effort and intensity. The problem was, despite all that grinding, nothing was resolving. No matter how much progress he seemed to make, there was always this sense inside of him that he hadn't arrived. He later described it as this painful, constant orientation toward becoming more awakened, becoming more clear, becoming more free. And then one day, something finally shifted. Not through a new technique, but through exhaustion, through complete and utter failure. And in that failure, the striving just collapsed. He saw that the very effort to awaken was reinforcing the sense of being a separate self who needed to awaken. The seeker itself was the problem. What remained wasn't fireworks or bliss. It was simplicity, ordinariness, presence without effort. I think of Adya as my own root teacher. And one of the reasons his story lands for me is because my own orientation was the same as his. If something isn't working, try harder, bear down. I've since come to see that impulse, that drive to push, to improve, to effort our way forward is incredibly common. I see it actually all the time in my coaching work. People will come after all these years of self-improvement, of healing work, of spiritual practice, and they'll say things like, I've done everything, literally everything. Or it's very common for people to say, I understand all this intellectually. I mean, I've had a big realizations, but I still find myself stuck in the same patterns. And they're tired. And they assume that tiredness means they're failing. But what if they're not failing? What if they're finally arriving at the end of a certain road? In Adyashanti's case, that is exactly when awakening came. When he hit the end of the road, when he saw that every single strategy he was employing wasn't working and they started collapsing, and he experienced the futility of doing more. And that giving up created the space for the direct recognition that awareness was never something to be attained, only something that had been overlooked while effort was running the show. What if the exhaustion that you're feeling, the frustration, the loss of motivation, what if that isn't something going wrong? What if it's a signal that you're ready for a completely different kind of attention? One that doesn't involve effort at all. If this resonates with you, feel free to leave me a comment. And if you are drawn to real life stories of awakening and transformation, you may enjoy my audiobook, Spiritual Wayfinders, True Stories of Awakening and Transformation. I'll leave you a link to that in the description. Peace and love.